David Fradin blends 50 plus years as a product leader with his passion for aviation as a flight instructor, now guiding organizations through Spice Catalyst and teaching at Manipal University to help build wildly successful customer delighting products. David, it's great to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you.
Yeah, and you're in California, is that right?
Yes, Silicon
Awesome.
Valley.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. Well, quick couple icebreakers here as we get started. David, what normal sound? Let's say chewing or clicking pens or something like that. What sound in that category would you ban if you ruled the world?
Uh, what are the noisy sounds coming from people eating? Yeah.
Okay. So similar, so you're like my wife. She hates hearing people chew. Yeah. She does. She'd set off on that as well. All right. So with your background in piloting, tell me what you think the most underrated aviation skill is.
Ooh, underrated aviation skill. Landing safely.
Okay. It's
I used
fair.
to used to tell all my students that when they graduate, before they graduate, they have to get me a bucket of prop wash, and then I
Okay.
promised them that for every takeoff, there's at least one landing.
There you go. Excellent. That's pretty good.
I
Seems
also
seems like
told them
a
on their first solo flight, I won't go along with them.
nice. That's awesome. All right. Lastly, what do you think the most overrated product management buzzword would be?
Um, Act fast, crash, kill things, and
Okay.
uh, and hopefully learn something from them.
There you
I
go.
I think that's entirely wrong, and that's why Zuckerberg's social media has gotten democracies around the world into so much
Okay.
trouble.
Very interesting. So you're talking about like the principle of act fast and break things type of
Yeah.
philosophy. Okay, we'll have to delve into that a little bit because I was just talking to somebody about that last week. So I'm curious. We'll have to jump into that. I want to start though. Let's. You've been doing this for over 50 years, right? So you have quite an extensive background. You've been in tech for I guess the majority of that time as well. Tell me about if we can like simplify it to start a fundamental principle with product success that has remained constant. So even in your early days, you were with HP, you've worked with Apple as well. Is there just a fundamental like starting line principle for product success that has remained unchanged throughout those decades?
Yeah, it's the five keys to product success that I teach. The name of my company, Spice Catalyst. The word spice is a mnemonic
Ah,
for the five keys. The S stands for a product market strategy, which says you ready, aim, and then fire. You don't do what
okay.
Zuckerberg says: ready, fire, and aim. That you have repeatable processes. That you have the information necessary to make informed decisions, that you understand your customer in terms of what it is they want to do, when they want to do it, why they want to do it, where they want to do it, how they want to do it, what's standing in their way, how important is it for them to get it done, and how satisfied are they with the current solution. And lastly is the employees, that they have the competencies or skill sets, which I've identified about 130 of them in my widely published book, Successful Product Design and Management Toolkit, that you have all of those skill sets at the beginning, intermediate, and advanced stages within your organization or with your organization and your outside consultants.
Excellent. This is great. I think sometimes people get so used to just a quick, oh yeah, it's this or it's that, or it's some like easygoing uh, saying that somebody will use. But the fact that you have it developed into a systematized principle means that you've been doing this a long time, so you know what you're talking about. This isn't just pull it out of your seat of your pants, see what works. So that's awesome. So tell me about if you've done so many things now. We talked about you have a love for aviation, you're a pilot instructor, you're a professor, you've written books, you mentioned your book here, consultancy. You've done a lot of things. Do you is there something with these different roles where different aspects of what you're doing inform product success in different ways? Are you carrying this in the same weight through all those different roles and responsibilities, or What is success in like an aviation standpoint? How might that differ from product success at Apple or being a professor speaking on these subjects? Like what are the differences, if there are any, or nuances in those pieces?
Well, in aviation, success is defined by walking away from the last landing.
It's great.
Success in product is that the product makes money and gets a return on investment.
That makes sense. Yeah, I like that. David, do you have any kids? I'm just curious.
Yes, I do.
Okay, because
Uh,
I have several kids, and your dry sense of humor just reminds me of familiar dad humor. I say obvious things like this to my kids about walking away from playing ground. Like, just I just have this vibe that he said these things to his kids before.
well,
So
when I got designated a distinguished professor at Manipal University in India, I called my daughter up and said, "I'm now a distinguished professor. Could I please get a little bit of respect?" And she said, "No."
no, it doesn't qualify. Oh, that's great.
And then when I was researching the book that I just recently published called Letters from My Jaime, my father's name was Hyman, and he sometimes went by the nickname Jaime. Uh, and this has nothing to do with letters from my vagina,
Oh,
but this is his. I got a hold of through one of my cousins a number of the letters that he sent home when he served in the U.S. Armed Forces during World War II.
okay.
And he was a pretty funny guy. And in my research to that, I found that the Fradin name goes back to France, when in 1492, my great grandmother left Spain due to the Inquisition and was traveling through southwestern France and was assaulted by a band of thieves. And a gallant young man by the name of Fradin came to her rescue. And then a few centuries later, one of my ancestors was a general in Napoleon's army, and another one was anointed a duke by the King of France. And I ignore the French Revolution and say that the royalty titles of duke are handed down from generation to generation.
There you
So if
go.
you search for my name, David Fradin, on Amazon, you'll see my books about product success, like building insanely great products, organizing and managing insanely great products, and the previously mentioned Wiley book. But you have to look under Duke David Fradin for letters from my Jaime. So when I found out
It's
that I was a
great.
Duke, I called up my daughter and said, "Can I now get some respect?" And she says, "No."
Did you ask her what is needed to achieve the sought respect? Is there a title that she's waiting for you to possess, or
I'm uh, I'm
does she have a bar?
too embarrassed to ask.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, if Duke and distinguished professor, those seem pretty up there. So we'll keep trying and see. So speak to me a little bit about that professorship. I'm curious because that intrigued me. Was this something along all these roles that you've taken on over the last 50 years? Was teaching in this kind of capacity something that you were wanting to do? Did it sort of come about organically? How did that come to the surface?
Well, I since I consult in product management, I've also written these books and have written a number of courses at each of the five keys to product success. And being a flight instructor, I'm used to teaching people in an environment where if they screw up, they can kill both of us. So teaching is not that difficult when with 2 feet firmly placed on the ground. And I'm an advanced ground instructor also and a certified high school teacher in California. And through college, I used to teach multiple private pilot ground school classes. So teaching becomes normal to me. So when Manipal asked if I would teach a bunch of courses dealing with product success, I said yes. And subsequent to that, IIPM, which is a prestigious business school in India, and Lovely University, which is another good prestigious MBA school. They both picked up my Wiley book and they run a 6 or 7 month executive program in product success.
Okay. Wow. That's pretty incredible. So there's a lot of things here with your five keys. We are talking about keys to success, how to do this right. maybe walk me through examples of where it's gone wrong, critical mistakes that product managers have made, that you've witnessed either firsthand, you've seen it, or heard about it. What does that look like when these things are not in place?
Well, just the last day or two, OpenAI released their fifth version of their
Hmm.
AI program, and it had all kinds of problems, and they withdrew it from the market and are replacing it with the fourth version. Well,
Okay,
they suggest to me that they didn't bother to test it before they released it on the public. And for a
interesting.
company that's valued at hundreds of billions of dollars or something like that, that's pretty incredibly stupid.
Yeah, I had seen the announcement that five was released. I didn't even know that they had reverted back, that there was that big of an issue. And part of the reason, I just told somebody today, I've actually been using DeepSeek for the past few months. So I switched from ChatGPT to DeepSeek. So maybe I shouldn't advertise that. I don't know. China's listening in. But I wasn't even aware, yeah, that five had to go back to four because of a bad launch.
And then you look at Elon Musk's Gronk. So he trains
Yep.
it on his tweets about admiring Hitler and anti Semitic retweets. And then he's surprised that his AI regurgitates the garbage in from his
Yeah.
garbage out. And
Right. Right.
AI is only as good as the stuff it uses to train itself. And you got
Right.
to be very careful if the AI engine doesn't tell you what its sources are.
Yeah. Can you tell me about what that's looked like from a technological evolution, right? So you've got a core skill set, I'm assuming, that you're going to need to have for exceptional product management. But AI is a little bit more recent. I'm thinking like what other tech was involved in good product success in your early days in your career starting out, and how has that specifically changed to develop to where we are now with the entrance of AI?
Well, I think one of the major things that affected the product management was the advent of electronic mail to be
Okay.
able to communicate with all the stakeholders in your organization quickly and easily worldwide.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that I mean, email's been around for as long as I've been around, so I don't know what that looked like prior to 93. When was that like not when was it all still not relying on the internet? Is this the
Well,
early 80s or
1982, 83,
okay.
when I was at Apple, we had Apple Link.
Okay.
Uh, and there was only two companies in the world that had internal email systems. One was Apple, the other was IBM.
Wow.
Uh, Prior to that, I was running John Connolly's presidential campaign, and I used a mainframe service for list handling and email called Dialogue, which became the basis for America Online, AOL.
Wow. Okay.
And the funny thing about the first versions of AOL, when it first came out, I looked at it, I said, my God, this looks very familiar. It looks like exactly like the Apple III bulletin board that I had Pete
Hmm.
Burnett program. And because I went to a lecture at Apple University from Tom Peters, who wrote the book Good to Great. And he
Yep.
found in his interviews of successful Fortune 500 companies that they could communicate with their customers. So I had this bulletin board system set up. I helped design the user interface, and I was able to communicate with one out of every three Apple III owners worldwide through this BBS. So it was, the early days of dial-up and so forth. And I had lunch with Pete a few years ago when I was writing my book, Building and Sailing Great Products. I said, Pete, uh, it was really surprising me to see the first versions of AOL, which I knew you wrote, and it looks so much like the Apple III bulletin board. And he put his head down, he looked at his lap, and he shook his head back and forth. He says, same code. So
Ah,
what I designed made it into AOL, and my daughter still won't give me any respect.
that's wild. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. You said that was 82 and 83.
Yeah,
Is that
84.
the 84? Okay. Wow. Okay. That's quite something. Jeez. Okay, imagine that. So I want to go back to this launch failure thing, and you mentioned ChatGPT 5 and how it was likely due to them not actually testing this out prior to launch. Is that is just like the lack of testing, is that a common occurrence with failed product launches, or are there other like operational things that are just getting missed when these things roll off the track so poorly out of the gate? What's happening there on
Well,
like a more often scale?
it's usually because they haven't taken the 3 to 6 months necessary to research and write a product market strategy, which is an
Uh,
understanding of what it is your product is going to do, the value proposition, the market research, the competitive research, the key selling points, the product positioning, and so forth. And without that fully developed, you go out there and it's a ready, fire, aim. And I've
yep.
had dozens of companies come to me and say, "Hey, help me find some customers." And I only find out that they had no idea who their customer was and who they were
Mm,
targeting. And I had several experiences in my career where I would join a company. Well, in the case of taking over the Apple III, the brilliant MBAs that got overpaid from Harvard and MIT and Stanford at Apple at the time, getting paid 40% more than anybody else in Silicon Valley, they couldn't figure out what market it is that the Apple III was going after. Uh,
okay.
None of them could agree. And now they're running around, and what's his name? David Pogue is coming out with a book on Apple. Didn't
Hmm.
talk to me about the Apple III, which is the third most successful computer in the world at the time,
Yeah.
behind the Apple II, the PDP-11 in terms of uh, number of units sold.
Okay.
And so I went to Jeff Raskin, who was one of the key architects on the Apple III, and later he was the architect on the Macintosh. But the room wasn't big enough for Steve Jobs and him to be in at the same time. So Steve fired him and he came back to work for the Apple II, Apple III group, the personal systems group. And I asked him, who was the Apple III designed for? And he said, the business market and the office market, and to correct the technical deficiencies of the Apple II. So,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So we're going to go after the business market. And we put together an ad campaign that says Apple III means business, and reinvigorated this computer and system in 1983 and 1984 after the first product manager for the Apple III, somebody nobody ever heard of. His name was Steve Jobs. Screwed everything up, shipped it early, did not test it, and they arrived in the dealerships dead on arrival. And upon doing some research, Sami Asafor, a friend of mine that was in service at Apple, found that the chips worked loose from the printed circuit board. And the proper way to fix this is to pick it up. It had no fan in it. It was all the chassis was a big hunk of aluminum, and pick it up and drop it from a foot above the desk, and that will reseat all the chips, and then the thing will boot.
No.
So
No.
it wasn't too encouraging for all of these MBAs to think, my God, the way you fix a computer is to drop it. And they couldn't
My
figure out who
gosh.
the market was.
Oh my word. That's hysterical. That it is funny, isn't it, when you think of yeah, when you think of individuals that are like brought into these professional landscapes and they're educated to do something, but that I guess you could say real world experience might be lacking, and it's coming from just a textbook standpoint where it's like, here, figure out this problem, but we know you've never actually interacted with the problem. It's a theoretical issue for you, and we want a practical solution to a only exists for you theoretically. And I think that's sort of messes with people. So
Yeah, you got to be very careful of who you copy based upon a book that they published.
yeah.
Uh, for example, I was traveling through the airport one day, and John Scully's book on Apple came out. John was the president for the second half of the time I was at Apple. And so I quickly went to the section on the Apple III, and it was all wrong. It was all untrue. And it was clear to me that the book was ghostwritten.
Oh
Uh,
no.
and I remember someone around that time saying, when I grow up as an entrepreneur, I want to be just like John Scully. Well, if you're going to
Oh,
follow that book, you got a real problem.
oh
Another example of
no.
that is The Art of the Deal, which
Okay.
Donald Trump did not write.
Right.
And the guy that ghostwrote the book for him regrets it to this day. You can see him on TV every now and then lamenting about that. So get to the basics. If your
Right.
product doesn't do what your customer wants to do, then it's worthless. And you can find that out ahead of time when you test your value proposition with the product in your beta testing or before to make sure that the product is doing what your customer wants to do.
Okay, so this is interesting. You're talking about research and understanding the customer when delivering a product. I'm thinking of a quote by Steve Jobs. I remember when he was featured on the cover of Time magazine. My sister saved this for me when the iPad was first announced, and I thought the iPad was the coolest thing. And I love the article on the iPad. But anyway, it featured Steve Jobs there, and his like seminal quote that was on there was, "People don't know what they want until you tell them," or something like that. And that was like his philosophy, right? Approach was, no, we're going to make it, and then the customers will say, oh yes, thank you for making this. So is there any truth to that? Is a little bit of like weighing these two things out, or how does that? I'm just curious because obviously you were around in the
Well,
Jobs era, so
in order for a person to know what they want or to know what they need, they first have to define the problem. And
okay,
frequently people can misdefine the problem. And then they have to think of what the possible solution might be or might be. A classic example of this is Henry Ford. When he went out and asked people in his hometown of Dearborn, Michigan, not far from where I grew up in Detroit, would they like to have a car or would they like to have an automobile? And they said,
right,
no, we want a faster horse.
right,
Well, if he had just followed what I propose, and that is go out and observe what people are doing. So he should have grabbed his mug of beer, went outside of the bar of the saloon there in Dearborn, sat on the stoop and watched people beat their horses with sticks to get through town faster. And that's perhaps why he didn't name it in the beginning a car or an automobile,
sure,
because nobody knew what that was. And then if they went to Google and they searched for a car or automobile, this would be back around 1910 or so, assuming the internet was there, when it came up, it said nobody's searching for those keywords. So that's
right,
probably why he named it a horseless carriage.
yes, that
So
makes
Steve was
sense.
right. They can't tell you what they want or what they do. But also, very few people had the vision that Steve
Mm,
had. And you got to keep in mind there was two Steve Jobs. There was Steve Jobs 1.0 that I knew and tried to stay as far away from him as I possibly could because he was an egotistical maniac. And then there was Steve Jobs 2.0. 2.0 emerged when he came back to Apple
yeah,
after he had the Apple III as an introduction failure, after he had the Macintosh as an introduction failure. He sold 100,000 of them on pure hype. And by January 1985, Apple sales for the Mac dropped to 4 units. And he
mm,
also had destroyed Lisa, which he had taken over as the general manager. And then they forced him out of the company because he was running the company into the ground. And that was preceded by him trying to kill the Apple III and the Apple II, not realizing that we were providing the cash cow cash for him to develop his beloved Macintosh.
yeah,
And he went off to do another computer called Next. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in my office at DataQuest, associate director of the market research service for personal computers. And the business reporter for Business Week came into my office and said, what do you think of Next? I said, you mean last? And sure enough, that product failed in, I don't know, roughly a year or so because he had mispositioned it in the market. I didn't find out until later that this, I forget how much he was charging for it. I think it was like $10,000. Was really a mainframe computer for your desk for the university market. So a professor could run their programs without having to stand in line for the
huh,
mainframe computer, as I had to do at University of Michigan when I was learning Fortran. So he left, and I found in my research for building his Haley grade products that he sought out a guy by the name of David Packard to help mentor him. And I knew Dave pretty well because I was in corporate PR at HP before I moved over into product management, and I was handling Dave's personal PR. He was chairman of the board of HP at the time, one of the original founders back in 1938. had been deputy defense secretary. So Dave told him, don't be afraid to cannibalize your own product. So
Hmm.
that's why when he came back to Apple, he wasn't afraid after he helped invent the iPod to help get the iPhone done, which was included the iPod, which was going to cannibalize the iPod. And
Right.
Dave told him,
Yeah.
if you don't cannibalize your own product, somebody else will. And
Hmm.
the basic thing is, I remember a fellow product manager that was at Apple and is actually a design engineer at Apple before he got into product management, was criticizing the first iPad for not having a stylus because
Hmm.
all pads
Oh yeah.
had styluses.
Yep.
And I said, are you nuts? Didn't you pay any attention to the product introduction? The iPad, Steve picked up off the counter, sat down in the easy chair, and he started consuming media, surfing the web,
Hmm.
watching YouTube videos, and so forth. And I said, this is not a creation device of media.
Hmm.
This is a media consumption device. All you had to do is look at the product positioning that Steve and his marketing people were doing when it was first introduced. And the iPad did not become a creative device until the iPad Pro came out, which people use for drawing and other kinds of
Yeah.
creative types of things.
That's a really interesting distinction. Yeah, because I remember that. I distinctly remember that complaint of like, "Where's the stylus? Why does this not have a pencil or something to draw with?" And I did not think of it as eloquently as you put it there. That it's consumption over creation and that utility. But that's really cool. So if you're looking at the current tech landscape and maybe like what's coming down the road, what excites you the most about the future of product development? Is it just the ability to integrate things like AI into processes? Is there something else that's maybe a lot of other people don't know about yet? But what's something on the horizon that makes you excited?
Well, AI offers an opportunity for the product success managers to get their job done faster and possibly better. Because before AI, you would search for keywords that people were searching for in order to
Yeah.
identify the problems that people were trying to solve. Now you can just go to AI, and I use one called Perplexity. And
Hmm.
I always thought about 10, 15 years ago, we should create a wiki do, like a Wikipedia, but for what people and companies do, and have it
Okay.
open source and everyone contribute to it. So I thought the other day that maybe I'll just ask Perplexity, what is it that people do? And I did, and it came back with a beautiful set of responses that, and even put them into different categories. You know, this is what they do from a personal basis. This is what they do to get to and from work, and on and on and on. And then I asked it, okay, which of these things that people do can AI do? And it came back and says AI cannot do this thing, AI cannot do that thing,
Mm.
AI could do this thing, and so forth. So to be able to summarize that quickly is extremely powerful.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so wrapping up here, David, tell me maybe a favorite product, could be something that you worked on or elsewhere, that to you exemplifies insanely great.
Well, I think the iPhone, the iPad, the HomePod, the EarPod, all exemplify that because Apple
Sure.
sits back and they observe what it is that people do. And when the iPhone first came out, Steve was spotted in Palo Alto hiding behind some bushes, just watching people coming and going in the Apple store. So he learned
Okay.
for
Yeah.
Steve Jobs 2.0, you've got to observe. Then
Yeah.
you go out and interview, then you survey. And now with AI, you can also ask questions about that, but you got to be careful about the responses. And I would have thought that Chat CBT would have put together a series of questions to test their model before they released it into the wild. For example, I went to, I think it was Microsoft's AI a year or two ago, and I put in my name, and it came back about 80% right about who I am and my background and experience.
Hmm.
I then put in at that time my business partner's name, and it came back and said he went to MIT. He never graduated from college. And half a dozen other things that were just simply not true.
Oh
Uh,
no.
and the nice thing about Perplexity, as opposed to that version of Microsoft, it tells you there's its source material, so you can go look
Okay.
at source material. And then
Interesting.
I have a friend of mine, a guy who used to work for me by the name of Leonard David, who's a space enthusiast. So I thought, I wonder what it says about Leonard David. And it came back and it regurgitated exactly the words that he had on his personal website.
Hmm.
That means we could fool AI just by publishing fake web pages with fake
Sure.
information on it. And all AI will do is the garbage in, garbage out, and
Yep.
regurgitate that.
Yep.
So, product success managers have to be careful and use their analytical skills to discern what is real and what is not.
Yep. That's awesome. All right, David, what's the best way for our audience to stay in touch with you? I know you mentioned your numerous books. How like way to find those and your content in general.
Best thing to do is go to my website, which is spicecatalyst.com. All my books and courses are listed there with links to them on Amazon and on Udemy. And my email is dave@spicecatalyst.com. And that's the best way is through that website.
Great. All right. So spice. Make sure I got this. I'm just trying to remember the words. We've got strategy, process, information, customer, and employee. Is that
You,
right?
you got it right. You
There you
win.
go. That's how you know it's a good acronym. that's, that's great. Awesome. Well, David, it's been great having you on. Thanks so much for joining us today, and look forward to keeping in touch with you and seeing what other crazy experiences you get to be part of in the product space down the road.
Thanks for putting up with me.
Yeah. Cheers.